Okay, great. Thank you very much for joining us, guys. Welcome to Tinfoil Tuesday special edition, anti-vax special. You all know me. My name is Simon Dan, and the guy who's with me today is a good friend of mine, Tony. How you doing, Tony? You all right?
Very well, mate. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Now, you're here for a reason, but we'll talk about that in a minute. First off, why don't you tell us a bit about what you kind of do or your online presence?
All right, yeah. So, well, people might not know that you and I, we met doing a podcast, didn't we? In Dad Hub.
We did.
We got through 60, 70 episodes.
Was it that many?
Yeah, 60, mid-60s, I think,
well,
at least.
I wasn't in that many, though. I was in like half of that, I think.
Yeah, those half are the best ones.
Yeah. Well, there is.
So, yeah.
I believe there's a Twitter poll, isn't there? Like, who was the least shit member? And I think I won that.
That was rigged.
Yeah.
That was rigged, right? Because, right, for those who don't know, this was ages ago, and we didn't really have that many listeners, did we?
Is it 3 years ago now? Is it about 3 years ago?
Something like that, yeah. And they put the poll up, didn't they? Who's the least shit member? I think it was. And then but then Richie
didn't include himself. I know.
Said everybody vote Dan. Yeah, it was a fix, mate. It was a fix.
No, yeah.
Well,
So,
yeah, we used to do that podcast. We had a great deal of fun, didn't we? And
we did.
We stopped doing it. Yeah, it sort of suffered from pod fade a bit. So I've sort of carried on the Dad Hub thing. We've got the Facebook page there, and I've got a bit of a vlog channel on Dad Hub on YouTube. So I talk about my weight loss efforts, because recently I got up to 20 stone, which is a bit much. And my wife had a quiet word with me. That was quite devastating.
But you've powered it down, though, haven't you? What are you to now?
So I got it down to 17 stone.
Nice.
Thanks to the bout of the flu. Don't congratulate me too much yet. I've put a stone back on.
Yeah.
So overall, I've lost 2 stone. But
still good.
I've stalled out a bit. So I'm keeping trying on with that. A couple of funnies, a couple of vlogs. Yeah, I'm just trying to grow the channel, really.
Yeah, and we'll put a link in the description for Tony's channel. So do check it out, because it is funny. I remember I shared that one we did with the DIY. That was hilarious. We were trying to build a shelf or something.
The woodworking thing. Yeah, I had this shelf, and I tried to convert it into a corner unit so that it would fit in the corner nicely for my daughter's little trophies. She's just for dancing. Yeah, it went really well. Yeah, check it out.
Hey, don't worry about it. I am awful at DIY. Seriously. I don't even buy my own tools. I've just adopted tools from my family over the years.
So how deep will you go into the DIY? Like, what sort of tasks do you stop at?
I can drill a hole in a wall and I can screw something in. That's about it. Yeah, that's about it. Yeah, it's pretty amateurish, to be honest. Yeah. So
I'm the other end of it. But the thing is, I think it's worse. I try too much. I try too many things, and sometimes they don't go well, and I end up making things a bit of a mess.
Yeah, you put yourself you put too much on yourself. That's what you're saying. Yeah. Okay, right. So obviously, I mean we're here to talk about the anti-vaccination movement, as it were, and how prevalent it's become. Did you see old Jessica Biel's throwing her weight behind it now?
Oh yeah, I just looked on there. I was looking on the internet, as you do.
Yeah.
Not doing research, as some people might be saying. It's not research. You're sat on the toilet thumbing your phone, and that's not research. Anyway, I was looking around and I saw a list of 30 people, and I was surprised to see people like Jim Carrey. I love that guy.
Jim Carrey? You serious?
Jim Carrey, yeah, because he used to go out with Jenny McCarthy, didn't he?
Oh yeah.
I was like, no, not you, Jim. No, why?
Who else was there?
I lost my headphones. There we go.
Is he the biggest? Was he the biggest person?
Al Pacino.
No.
Yeah, legit.
Unbelievable.
What can you do? And these are people with influence.
I know. So yeah, we're here today to talk about the anti-vax movement. So a little bit later on, we're going to have a special guest who is an expert on all this sort of things. We've got a few questions for him, but for the moment, Tony and I are just going to have a chat. And I thought we'd start by looking at. So I shared this article with you.
Yeah.
Didn't I? It was the top 10 threats to global health in 2019. And unbelievably, anti-vaxxers were on there, weren't they?
I couldn't believe it. And to see to see the kind of things that are on this top 10 list alongside anti-vax. You've got antimicrobial resistance, which is it's shaping up in a few decades. This is going to lead towards one of the biggest disasters in medicine ever. And then what else you got? HIV,
Ebola.
HIV is on a list. There. Ebola on a list with this. Dengue fever that's got a 20% fatality rate. In
global influenza pandemic. That's on there as well.
It's incredible. Honestly, it was.
And air pollution and climate change.
But climate change isn't real. It's fake.
Well, I haven't addressed that one yet. Actually, that's a can of worms that I've yet to open.
We'll put that to one side.
Yeah, but yeah, I just couldn't believe that the World Health Organization are taking it so seriously in terms of a threat to human global health. I just couldn't believe it.
Measles has seen a 30% increase in cases globally. The reason for this rise is complex. Not all of these are due to vaccine hesitancy, but some countries that were close to eliminating the disease have seen a resurgence.
Yeah.
To be so close to wiping something out.
I know. Now, I mean, you're here for, obviously, you've got quite a tie to this sort of an issue, haven't you? Why don't you tell us a bit about that?
So, we were almost one of those people, which is absurd, and I'm quite ashamed, embarrassed. Yeah, embarrassed is probably a bit more of it, because we were almost one of these people. We weren't preaching or anything like that, but the issue was, our first child was born, and around about 2-3-year-old, it became apparent that his speech and language wasn't developing as it should. And we were getting assessments due for speech and language therapy. And during these processes, I noticed he wasn't maintaining eye contact when he should. And, these little indicators of being on the spectrum he was only young, but they were keeping an eye on him for it. Yeah. And as he got a bit older, 3-4-year-old, the diagnostic process for autism started. And by the time we got to about 5 or 6, he was diagnosed as being on the spectrum. And it was devastating, to be honest. It was weird. We were he wasn't our first child. We had twins, but they only made it. They only went to 6 months, and they were delivered, and it was just too soon.
Yeah.
So Noah is super precious to us, as everyone's kids are too.
Of course, yeah.
To us, he was something that little bit special to us. So it was weird when he got diagnosed. It was as a parent, you imagine the sort of life that you'll have, and meeting a woman or a man, getting married, having children, and what sort of job they'll have and stuff. And it was weird. It was almost as if that person, even though he never existed, but except for in our minds, I can't speak for my wife, but for me it was almost like a kind of mourning for a mourning, a loss of the life I'd imagined for him. That person that I'd pictured in my head would never be. It was a strange period for us, but I'll be honest. Then after a few years, we realised living with him, helping him cope, and he's teaching us just as much about it as we're helping him. And you know what? He's just fine. But anyway, yeah. So the time was approaching for the second kid for the MMR. It was about 6 months before she was due.
Yeah.
And that. Because it's everywhere, the internet, the information is just everywhere.
Absolutely. Did you at any point after you got the diagnosis, did you ever think to yourself that's related to vaccines at any point, or were you just completely not even thinking about that?
Not when we got the diagnosis.
Yeah.
It was just something that it was in the forefront of our mind, the diagnosis, and our life would have to change, and everything was going to be terrible, and it was a life of hardship. And because my missus works in a special needs school, and she has done for 15 years now, specialising. She's a TA, works with autistic kids, and obviously she had the burden of knowledge, and of course she talks to me about work to an extent that she can share with me, and we had that burden of knowledge, and she's seeing kids right across the spectrum from up here and down here, and it was scary. But no, that didn't enter in our minds right away. It was just when it was approaching the time we had this conversation. She goes, "Oh well, I don't want this to happen again. What if it does have something to do with it? And I was like, no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. And it was strange though. There was a fear. There was a fear, and we considered doing the having the MMR broken down into 3 different vaccinations and doing the protocol that way, so it'd still be protective, but we'd still almost bought into the MMR autism thing.
And that choice to do it separately was kind of that was influenced by that. By that,
absolutely. By the fear and the worry, and I mean, what even if it's a small tiny chance, we should. But you know what? And we put a pin in it, and we said we'd come back to it. But so time passed, and it came around again. The time to do it was right upon us.
Yeah.
And you know what? When that time had passed, and we hadn't talked about it, but then we started to talk again, and we sort of, for some reason, we hadn't discussed it again, but we were like, no, we're not doing that. This is ridiculous. But the fact that we wavered, two normal, intelligent people, we're not, I don't know how to put this, we're not idiots, but we were sucking in because we were scared.
And you consider yourself not to be like anywhere near someone who would take a conspiracy theory seriously.
No, I mean, I'm an engineer. I'm a career engineer. My wife has got her head screwed on tight. I believe in tangible facts. I believe in processes. I believe in experimentation. I believe in things that you can see and do and feel and test. But for some reason, we were just suckered in for that little bit of time. It's weird. That's how they get you. It's like they use your love against you and turn it into fear. It was the strangest thing ever, and we were very close to being those people
that did it. Yeah. So once you'd got past that, then, so once you'd kind of didn't give in to that kind of fear, obviously everything's all fine since then.
Yeah, I mean, with the first lad, Noah, he's fine. This period of mourning was so stupid. He's fine. He's living with a kid that's autistic. It's a bit of an adjustment, but you develop coping strategies together, and there are things that he's not so great at. His social interactions and that are a bit difficult. His peers at school, he comes off as a bit less mature, a bit silly, and sometimes they get frustrated with him. But as he grows up, and we're living in a more and more tolerant society, I've noticed even in the last 10 years, kids aren't as bad as kids used to be when we were little. I'm going to move a little bit. I'm getting sun right in my face. But kids aren't. So, he's all right. So there's disadvantages and advantages to it. He's in a mainstream school. He struggled socially, like I said, but he's got laser focus. He's superb at maths. He's got passion for things. The passion that he's got, he loves things like nothing I've seen before. And most engineers are weirdos anyway. Take it from me, I'm one of them. So if he goes into that profession, he'll be all right. He'll fit right in. Cool. But the other daughter, we've had 2 daughters since, and it was a moment of madness, a moment of weakness. But it's but to think we were almost sucked in.
And
it seems like go on, mate.
Like it's. I'm just wondering how many families actually broach that kind of point where they're kind of unaware, but who obviously do end up doing all the vaccinations and everything like that. But I wonder how many families were close not to. Yeah.
For example, we do that. So say we did split the MMR up because we thought possibly there might be something to it. So they have the 3 vaccinations separately. That's something out of the ordinary. So that's something you discuss among parents when you're in a group. It might come up in a discussion, and again, absolutely. It sort of disseminates out, doesn't it? Oh well, if they thought that, then perhaps there is something to this, and then they do their research, in quotation marks.
Oh yeah, it's difficult.
And the more you read, the worse it gets.
Well, I mean, I've got a similar, not a similar story, but I've got a little bit of a story. So I'm roughly the same age as you, aren't I? Maybe a tad younger. And so we were kind of born before, or the MMR wasn't really around, was it? It was individual vaccines back then. So there wasn't the combined MMR. And I, for whatever reason it was, didn't get my mumps vaccination. and I had my measles and my German measles, but I didn't get my mumps one. And when I was in I think it was my late teens, possibly early 20s, I contracted mumps. I'm telling you now, if anyone's had mumps, you don't wish that on your worst enemy, because your testicles, they feel like they've been put in a vice.
Really?
And the pressure is, it affects, like, obviously it affects your glands up here as well, and you have swollen glands around here.
Yeah. What sort of sizes are we talking about with the swelling, both upstairs and downstairs?
Well, you know, when you get like you're quite ill and you get like a bit of swelling in the glands here, and you can feel the lumps.
Yeah.
At least twice the size of that. So
you can see the lumps, right?
Visibly,
wow.
Like visible lumps under the jawline here. You had a couple of little lumps here as well. But obviously your testicles are glands as well, and they were horrendous. The pain is something I could not describe. So, for the case of one vaccine, to not have got that, then, like I say, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, because it was awful. Literally, I couldn't sleep. The pain was horrendous. And I'm lucky, because it can also make you infertile, having mumps. And I'm lucky because obviously I've gone on to have kids, but you've gone on to have like 1,000 children, haven't you? No, that could have ended it. That could have ended it before it even begun. So I'm lucky in that sense. And it's just when you weigh it up about having I mean, of course there are risks. Of course there are risks with any sort of medical procedure, and vaccines are the same. But when you weigh those risks up against the benefits of having them, in my eyes anyway, surely the benefits are way outweigh any small risks that you could possibly have. But yeah, mumps is not nice.
Even if hypothetically it came about that it was discovered that vaccinations may cause autism, I would still do it.
Yeah, I mean,
I would still do it. Like you said, it's a risk reward. You've got to balance it up.
If there was a valid scientific link, and it was something like 1 in 50,000, then you would still go ahead and do it.
Of course you would.
There's so many risks like that. Well, I mean, there's higher risk than that in medicine, and you still go ahead and do things, don't you? So
yeah.
But hopefully, as when we speak to Dr. Andrew in a minute, hopefully he can explain all the ins and out of why there isn't a link and all that sort of business, and what the vaccines are about. So we'll be talking to him in a bit. Right, yeah, so we looked at this video, didn't we? I think it was about 6 months ago now, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a while ago, yeah. So it's glad we found it again. It's brilliant.
Yeah. It's this guy called Dr. Baker, and he calls himself a doctor. I don't know his actual credentials. But he claims to be against vaccinations, and he created a little video, and he did a little experiment in it, didn't he? So what we're going to do is we're going to watch that video now, and we'll comment as we go. Okay, here we go.
So they'll tell you that there's no mercury. Well, they changed the name. It's now thimerosal. There's no aborted fetus tissue, formaldehyde. I'm just rattling off some ones that I remember. Acetone. There's all kinds of different stuff. Now, if I were to put that in a shot glass and say, here, give this to your child, you would go, no, not a chance. There's no way I'm going to have my child drink that. Okay, well then why would you inject all those chemicals right and directly into their bloodstream?
So that's assuming that everything he's saying here is correct on all those chemicals and things.
Yeah.
Because I know there's a lot of stuff banded around, isn't there? In terms of what is and what isn't in these vaccines.
Well, that's the thing. He says all of these things, and up to this point, he's not incorrect. If we put all of this crap in a glass and say give it to your kid? No, you wouldn't.
No.
And I think he blows himself out of the water a little bit here when he talks about quantity.
He does, doesn't he? Right, let's carry on. Let's carry on, yeah.
The response is usually, oh, well, because it's just a little bit. Oh, okay, watch this. I love this. Here, hopefully you can see this. Glass of water, right? Nice and clean. No problem drinking it. What's the toothpick for? Well, the toothpick, you see, there's a pile of dog poop. I have a black lap, so it's pretty easy to find around here. I'm going to go over here and put it, this toothpick, I'm going to stick it in the dog poop, okay?
Got a dog egg on standby.
I just stuck this toothpick right in the middle of some dog crap.
Right, I'm just going to stop it there. Like, maybe there's a tiny smidge on there.
Yeah.
It's not like he's coated it in dog poo, is it?
No, I mean, it's not the end of the world.
No, I'm sure I've like inadvertently probably put dog poo in my mouth by accident.
We've had multiple children. You change your nappy. Sometimes you forget to wash your hands, and then later on you find yourself chewing your nails, and
Absolutely.
you're like,
yeah.
Well, never mind.
Yeah, and is baby poo worse than dog poo? I mean, it's poo's poo, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right,
it all stinks.
Let's see what he does.
I can't even see the poop on the stick, but watch.
Oh my
Would you
word.
drink this? You can't see any poop.
Yeah.
But you know that there's a toothpick that's been stuck in poop in this glass of water.
Depends, because if it's the end of the month and you bet me 20 quid, I might drink that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I might do if it was for a dare or something.
Yeah.
You know, don't get me wrong. If there was a big turd in the middle of the glass, I wouldn't drink it.
No.
But that.
But he's defying his own point.
I know.
It's minuscule amounts.
I
Like,
know.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'll chug that.
Yeah.
I would chug it just to prove him wrong.
Oh my word!
Can you imagine his face if he just go over and go, "I'll take that."
He'd be like, "All right then, all right, yeah." And this is one of his top 5 reasons to not vaccinate.
Yeah.
Because you wouldn't drink water with a bit of dog poo in it. Top 5 reasons. What's the health benefit for drinking water with dog poo in it?
Iron.
Roughage. Oh dear, this guy is just crazy. Absolutely crazy. Did he say anything else?
Oh, I can't remember.
Right, let's have a look quick.
You were probably going to say no, right? But then I would go, oh, but it's just a little bit. It's just a trace amount. You see,
Look
you
how
wouldn't
excited
take
he's
it
getting.
because you know the dog poop's bad for you. If you understand what the chemicals are doing to your children's body, you wouldn't put even just a trace amount in there. Here's the last point, number 5. Let me get calmed down here.
He's got to calm down. He's got to calm down, he says. Oh my dears. Oh my days. I've had enough of that guy. I've had enough of him.
He's got to chill out more.
Oh
Like,
Jesus, yeah. Oh right, okay. I think what we're going to do is we're going to bring in Dr. Andrew. So, give us 2
maybe he
seconds.
knows this guy, Doctor. What's his face?
Maybe he knows. Yeah, that's the first one we're going to say. Do you know Dr. Baker? So let's do that now. Okay, so here we are back with Tony, and we've also got Dr. Andrew. Dr. Andrew, thank you very much for joining us.
No worries. Good to
Thank
be here.
you. Do you want to tell us a bit about yourself, quick?
Yeah, so I'm a fellow of biochemistry at Downing College in Cambridge, and my day-to-day job is actually researching breast cancer, so how it's driven and trying to find new ways to treat it.
Oh, wow, cool. So, obviously you're here because Tony and I are doing a video on the anti-vax movement, and we aren't specialists in that at all. So, if it's all right, we're going to throw a couple of questions at you, kind of to improve our level of understanding, and hopefully everyone else's as well. So, and we can get this video out to as many people as possible. So, I guess my first question is what actually makes a vaccine up? What are the ingredients of a vaccine?
So, I mean, I won't give you an exact part list because that's one, it's something I haven't memorized, but also because, you know, the different vaccines have different things in it. One of the things people will often complain about is mercury, which actually really hasn't been in vaccines ever. If you understand your chemistry, you know that if you combine two things together, they become something different. So like sodium is a really bad thing, chlorine's a really bad thing, sodium chloride, salt.
Yeah.
Not quite as bad as chlorine. So you used to find these mercury-containing compounds which will help preserve it. That's basically been removed from all vaccines you're ever going to come across today.
Okay.
The bit which is actually important, though, and the reason I brought that up is because I know that's what people focus on, but it's actually the bit that's important is they contain something which will train your body to recognize when it actually comes into contact with the actual disease. And in the case of many vaccines, that is something that just looks a bit like the virus. It isn't a virus. It's never going to be alive, and it will never do any harm. There are vaccines that have live viruses in them, but they're quite rare. And then there's somewhere in between where you take a virus and you kill it before you give it to the patient, and they're somewhere in the middle. But these days, most vaccines are not based on live viruses because there are hazards involved with them.
Okay, and that's quite a common misconception, isn't it? Because I hear a lot that the virus is present in the vaccines all the time.
Yeah, and and the reality is, if you go back to the early vaccines, like when smallpox, they found that cowpox protects you against smallpox, so you can infect someone with cowpox and they wouldn't get smallpox.
Okay.
And that was a big deal because smallpox would kill you, cowpox wasn't particularly nice, but you'd survive.
Yeah.
So, really, to be honest, the thing about when you think about vaccines is what's the benefit and what's the risk. And today, the benefits are phenomenal, and the risks are very, very small.
Yeah, and we were just talking about that before you came on. That even if there was a link between certain things and vaccines, but that link was extremely small risk, then the likelihood is we'll probably still go ahead with it.
Yeah, and where the UK and the US is slightly different. A person may get really unfortunate with a vaccine, but we have the NHS. So if that happens, you have your healthcare paid for the rest of your life.
Sure, yeah.
In the US, they actually don't have the same kind of healthcare, so there's these funds to support people who claim the vaccine did harm. And that's a whole different system to here, and that changes the dynamic slightly, that people will start talking about, this vaccine did harm, and they have to prove it for a legal process. And of course, that isn't particularly helpful because the vaccines do a huge amount of benefit. And then the one person who may be unfortunate, you don't want it to be your family member or someone you know, but they have to fight for that support. And I think that's something that's very different and changes our attitudes quite a lot to these things.
So the other thing I wanted to ask about, so bearing in mind those ingredients that we've just talked about, how do those ingredients compare to the levels in the normal environment? Because I hear that argument quite a lot, that apparently because of the vaccinations, everything in the vaccinations, it's way more than what's in the normal kind of environment.
I mean, the question really is what's the normal environment? What are we actually worrying about? And these are quite loaded questions. And the answer is every ingredient is slightly different. Every ingredient has a different natural abundance. But I think the thing people have to remember is that the normal environment is actually pretty aggressive. One of the most toxic chemicals you come across is oxygen. Yeah. I find oxygen quite useful. But your whole biology is geared up to deal with the fact that oxygen is incredibly toxic. And most of life on this planet, before photosynthesis came along, couldn't deal with oxygen at all. There was a massive extinction event. So when people say, what's natural? Well,
yeah, of course.
The question isn't really what's natural. It's what is safe.
Okay.
And what are the right amounts. And, I mentioned salt being fairly safe. If you eat really large quantities of salt, it's bad for you.
Of course, yeah.
But would a small injection of a bit of salt to make it sort of make the injection work correctly? No, it's not going to cause you long-lasting effects. You'll just wee it out a few days later.
Yeah, okay. Tony, you got a question, mate?
Yeah. How can regular people like me access the works of the academic community to get real information, real scientific research and statistics, so that they can form their own evidence-based argument and opinion, instead of just sat on the porcelain throne thumbing through Wikipedia or Mumsnet or all of these forums that are perhaps not as regulated as they really could be?
I mean, the answer is not easily. But that is the real thing. The academic literature is not easy to be read by non-experts. It's not easily accessible. We have a really good movement at the moment to try and make anything funded by UK funding has to be published in a journal in an open format so anyone can read it, but that is not there yet. And even when you do get that, as I say, can you understand it? The other
Probably
problem is,
not.
Yeah. The other problem is cherry picking. I can find you the odd paper that has a negative result, and there might be thousands of positive ones. And if I Google vaccines cause terrible thing of the week, I may find the one paper. Because I didn't Google, vaccines are absolutely okay. And we bias ourselves with our own searches. So you can see academics doing this. Like when they're writing the paper, they might pick the references because they were Googling for that. And then that's when we have peer review, and people go, well, wait a second, you've missed this other side of the argument. And peer review is this very powerful thing because other scientists check your work.
Sure, yeah.
In terms of, the public trying to understand these things, there is huge pressure for scientists to engage with the public. There is huge pressure to try and make these things understandable, and there are organizations who put out podcasts. Most of the big journals have one now. The other thing is there are organizations like NICE, which regulate what medicines we can have, and you've really got to decide at what level do you want to engage. And I would say organizations like NICE and the NHS actually provide really good material in a really digestible way, and they do see the publics as the stakeholders. The question is, if you have for some reason no trust in the NHS, then how do we repair that trust?
Sure.
And that, I think, is a different question. And I don't think you say that, well, go and read the primary literature, because actually you need to have someone you trust to distill it down. I think, sadly, that's the problem. Is some of the people who are winning the trust are people who I don't agree with, and I believe they have their own agendas. Sometimes it's just popularity by spouting off a very popular opinion just to get more credit.
Yeah, and that, I mean, like, for example, what do you make of these, like the celebrities now that are coming out to back all of this movement? Because they're quite influential people, and they've probably not really looked at it properly.
So I think, there's been anti-vax goes back nearly as long as vaccination. Yeah. So that's one of the things to realise. The current wave of, media stuff coming out is concerning because people listen to them, yet they have absolutely no credibility or reason you should listen to them. But of course, people are. So therefore, we really need to get to the point where these people acknowledge their responsibility. And it's not just vaccination. It can be weight loss. It can be diet pills. It can be, mental health issues. These are things which affect young people. They're things that everyone wants to get some advice on. And we kind of have an attitude that these people are trustworthy because they're in the media, but they don't necessarily have a skill set to make that judgment. And therefore, we need to help. They're not held to account. And I think there is a trend to hold these people to account. But yeah, get your medical advice from someone who's a medically trained practitioner. It's probably obvious.
Yeah.
But as I say, there is, for some people, a trust issue there. And that's what I think we need to rebuild, not necessarily tell people to read all the evidence, because it's really complicated. That isn't to say give up on your skepticism. Be skeptical. But go in at the level which is the right level for you to get the facts. And, movie stars are at one end, the academic lecturers at the other. Somewhere in the middle, there's organisations which are trying to work really hard and explain the facts.
So, Tony, with your situation, how deep did you delve when you were, wavering a bit after what happened?
Not really very deep at all. It was all based on public opinion and just really stupid things. And it was this the conversation. It was at a single point in time, and it was just based on the misinformation that was going around. It's a tired thing to say. The internet is a double-edged sword. Information is powerful, but misinformation is even more dangerous. It's ridiculous. Andrew, we were talking earlier on that our first child was diagnosed autistic, and for a short time, just because of everything that was going on through fear and fear more than anything, we considered breaking up the MMR to get singular vaccines, and we didn't in the end, because we sort of ultimately we didn't want to feed into all of that because we had no evidence based on it, but we were worried. It was coming up to that time, and we were worried about the future. We had very little experience living with an autistic kid, and it was scary. We were afraid. So for just the smallest moment, we considered doing something like that. We didn't in the end.
I think it's completely reasonable. I mean, I have 2 kids. I had to make the choice what to do about vaccination. I wouldn't say I didn't think about it. Of course I thought about it. And of course, you sit there going, well, if one of these complications happened and you were responsible for the action which led to it, you would suddenly feel awful. Now, the autism vaccine link has been completely debunked, but you still feel responsible for making a choice for your child. And it's well accepted that actually doing nothing is generally a lot easier than doing something. So, no, I completely get why people buy into this and why they feel very cautious about what the decisions are making for the kids. I also think we live in a very sanitized world where, I've never seen someone, well, I've never really knowingly seen someone with polio. I probably have seen people. But, if you go before the vaccine, you had wards of people in iron lungs. That is incredibly sobering. Yeah. Whereas instead we sit there going, well, when was the last time you met someone who got polio?
Yeah.
And I think the other thing that this can't be vaccinated, or leukemia patients who might have their immune system obliterated as part of their therapy, and these people are very vulnerable to diseases which we consider eradicated because they're still around, like low-level measles and things in the population. But you then go, well, why do we call it herd immunity? It's the right word, but when you go and talk to patient groups, people go, well, I don't like being called an animal. I don't like the word herd. And there are people who deliberately use the word community immunity.
Okay.
Now, little things like that make a big difference to uptake, because and this is where I think there's a really important role for people who sit between the scientists who, herd immunity might be the technical word, but community immunity is a really useful way of getting community engagement. And then people start to realize, look, you're not just doing it for your kids, you're doing it for everyone in the community.
Absolutely.
And it is really important because, if you get one of these autoimmune diseases, you're the person who's far more at risk than the person who skipped on the vaccine, because they'll probably be fine. And we do know when measles outbreaks happen, people die, and they're not the people who didn't vaccinate by choice. They're the people who, unfortunately, couldn't get immunity.
Yeah, that's one of the more difficult things, isn't it? Would you say that the MMR autism link is probably one of the strongest reasons why the anti-vax movement is around today?
So I think it's a very complicated issue what currently pushes the anti-vax movement, and I think there have been celebrities who push it. I think the autism one was particularly high profile, especially with Tony Blair refusing to say what he was doing with his kids.
Yeah.
And I would argue that, because I think it later transpired he did just use the MMR, that he had an obligation to answer that question. I can understand why he wants to keep personal life personal, but you're the Prime Minister. And Andrew Wakefield still in the press now. He's still pushing this agenda despite being struck off, despite, as I said, I don't think he actually wrote in the paper the connection. I think he only said it at a press conference. I think nearly everyone has said that paper. Everyone else in that paper said that was not a good academic paper. It's been retracted. But he hasn't something to gain from it. He was trying to sell, or at least he had a conflict of interest that he had an individual vaccine instead of MMR. He was not unable to profit from it. So it's a powerful story, but there are other people. There are people who pick up on the mercury. There are people who pick up on the multiple vaccines at the same time. There are people who, deal with all sorts of these issues. The one reason I think vaccines also continue to be linked to autism, though, is about the time we give vaccines is about the time autistic symptoms are known to appear.
Yeah.
And there's not really a good word for it, but there's this feature that children kind of seem to be doing quite well, and then the autistic traits when they appear make some of the things which parents think they were doing well on almost backpedal.
Okay.
And I haven't been an autistic parent, and I'm talking cautiously because the personal experience is obviously personal. But those people feel that when they get the vaccine, they saw the child change.
Right.
And I think that's a very powerful thing to witness. But it's noticeable. I think it was Jenny McCarthy when she said for years that vaccines caused autism in a child, and eventually they found out that he didn't have autism. He had another condition.
Okay.
So, yeah, there's a celebrity thing feeding in again. These very emotional situations.
Yeah. Gives
it a power that perhaps other things don't. But you go and talk to the autistic community and the people, and they say, well, they'll use phrase like neurodiversity. They'll talk about how they don't want a cure. It's who they are. And there's a very powerful narrative coming from there is, could you stop making us sound like an illness and start saying we're just different? And, I say this as someone who hasn't got an autistic child, so I haven't had to deal with those challenges. But, it's loud and clear that the autistic adults are saying we're human beings, and actually they find this whole debate fairly insulting.
Yeah, that's what you said, wasn't it?
Sorry, Dan.
Tony. You said that, didn't you?
So someone made an offhand comment. There was no malice in it. They just said, "Oh yeah, your son suffers with autism, doesn't he?" No, he's not suffering. He's loving life. He's fine. He is him. My wife deals with a lot of people with all sorts of different needs, not just autism. And I said, and once I said to her, "Oh, it must be hard for them." Well, what do you mean? They don't know any different. They have no experience of, as far as they're concerned, the world as they perceive it is the world. It's the world. They don't know any different. They are themselves. You know what I mean?
So I'm, as my university position, I are responsible for so number of students. Some of them in a role where I'm more looking after their well-being, and some who I teach. And the idea is those ones I have to look after their well-being. They have completely different people teaching them. They're usually subjects I'm not involved in. And I see them about 6 times a year to say, how's it going? Are you coping? And of course, if you're autistic, that will often be something that they have on their paperwork to say, I need some kind of special support. It may be. And usually things that actually most people don't, I need my notes a bit earlier in advance, because if you give them to me on the day, I might struggle to process it. One that comes up quite a lot is they don't like having their room changed year on year. They quite like to have a place that they get used to. And every student will be different. Everyone will have a different one of these forms, no matter what reasonable adjustments people feel they need. And we work with them. And what can tell you, they're all different. We never really discuss the autism because it's not really relevant. Some of them have traits which people would immediately associate, and other of them, you would never be able to put that label on them by looking at them. And what you find is they're just different, and there are certain things that lead to that diagnosis. But they're happy, they're getting along with life, and we support them with their needs, which are genuinely different from other people I deal with. But everyone, has needs, and that's not an issue.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you say, that link between MMR and autism has now been thoroughly squashed, isn't it? There's no doubt at all in that.
It's one of those things that, because it keeps being tested, and now it's been tested in many different countries on many different scales, huge scales, and every time someone does the stats, it comes out with there isn't a link. And this is just how it is, and people find it very hard to accept that. Stats are very hard to get your head around. They're not the easiest part of maths. And someone will hang on to that one study they may believe in, but if you have 20 studies and only one shows it positive, that actually probably means that one's an outlier. And measure something enough times, you do get outliers.
One of the things I hear quite a bit, I don't know if you've heard this, Tony, is the Amish community, because they cite that the Amish don't vaccinate and there's no cases of autism, and they're linking that, like incorrectly linking it. But
I wonder if that's more of a lack of data.
And it's a small community as well, isn't it? A very small community on the whole.
Well, that could be genetic. I don't think it is.
Of course.
But, there are certain populations who we do know who have very strict religious reasons for not mixing as other populations might. And we, certainly breast cancer has a very strong connection with one ethnic minority in Europe. And that's because there's a lot more carriers of that gene. I think in autism, I think it's more likely that the communities we're discussing it is lack of reporting. Autism is actually a really hard diagnosis without, a level of sophistication which those people by choice aren't generally engaging with.
Of course, yeah. What was the process like for you, Tony? Was it quite a lengthy one?
It was. It was about a year, and he goes and sees various specialists. And at the end of the year, they all get together on a panel, and they between themselves they put all of their evidence together, and I think it was a while ago now, but I think they make their decision based on a majority basis. They are looking at all of the traits identified, and it may well be that some traits were identified but not enough to meet the it's just like a grading scheme, you either fall above the line or you don't, and it's the cliche, the overused statement, oh, everybody has autistic traits. Well, that's probably true, to be honest, but yeah, it was about a year. It took about a year,
and it's really, what does the process serve? And in where I deal with it, of course, is it is a label that tells our resources what extra and how we have to deal with these students to make sure they get the best time of experience at university. There are other labels that people have different requirements, and we need to support them. You've got to make sure the rooms are accessible for a person if they have an accessibility difficulty. And here, that label has a particular need, and those decisions will be not just about saying this child's got autism because people want to know, but also, how are we going to use that information? How is that going to improve that child's life? And that means diagnosis is a lot more complicated than, just going, you have a sticker to say you've got this. It's within a society, and what value does that diagnosis have?
The label itself meant nothing to us as parents. We didn't need it, but my wife, having worked in the education system for a long time, she was aware that having the diagnosis would unlock funding at the school that he was at, and they could provide the services that he needed. For instance, to look at him, he just comes off as a bit immature for his age. If a stranger met him, he's fine. But he has a one-to-one that purely just helps him deal with the social situations. Academically, he's really independent. If anything, he's doing better than his peers. But yeah, he needs the help with the social element, and of course that person needs a salary. So the diagnosis helps to unlock that with the local authority.
And when you talk about a panel of people discussing and choosing whether that's a diagnosis, that's basically, do we need to unlock that funding for him? So I think that very complicated social element to it often gets lost, that diagnoses are more than just, as you say, a label.
Dr. Andrew, really appreciate you coming on. It's been very informative. Tony, have you got any more questions you want to fire?
No, that's it from me. Thanks a lot, Andrew.
Yeah, I think we've exhausted our question list. But yeah, it's been very informative. Really enjoyed it. Thank you very, very much for joining me. Okay, so that ends the anti-vaccine special. I really hope you enjoyed it. Please do like if you did, and subscribe as well. And I'll see you all on Friday. Thank you.